But yeah, this is going to be an analysis of Gondola Skip. This is mainly for myself, but if this can help other people, I'll refer it to other people as well. But yeah, so there's a few things that you need to keep in mind with Gondola Skip. So for one, when you're jumping off of here, there's a little corner here that you want to... That's where you want to try to start your jump. But you don't want to just go straight off when you do the jump. You want to kind of angle yourself towards the right like this. You want to kind of jump off towards the right like that. Because if you go too far to the left, you will instantly fail the trick no matter how good your jump is. So you definitely want to make sure you get yourself further to the right. And then in addition to that, you're going to do a pretty big jump with Flut Flut. And this can take some practice. So one of the places I recommend practicing it is... Let me just head over there. I think this can be really very useful to think of it like this. Is depending on whatever route you're learning, most likely if you're learning a route that involves Flut Flut, you're going to have to take Flut Flut from the spawn point here. Let me just kill myself, that might be easier to explain it. And I'll just load the save really quickly that I have, which puts me like right here. So for instance, let's say we have Flut Flut over here, and we want to take Flut Flut out of here. You know, you do this manipulation to get Flut Flut out and over this barrier. So you have Flut Flut now. Now, you have two choices. You can just go over the bridge, which is the safe way, which doesn't require you to really focus on how you're jumping with Flut Flut because you have these safety nets. Or you can try to make this jump right here. And I feel like this jump right here is very good to practice the jump mechanics for Flut Flut, because you see this is a pretty big gap, and looking at it you'll be like, you know, you probably can't make that jump with Flut Flut, but you can. And that's the type of jump that you want to use for Gondola. You want to get really far out, and you want to really space your jumps and your flaps. And this kind of is a way for you to practice the jump and how it works. Because you want to... Some people use visual cues, like, you know, when you see Flut Flut's white bottom, or white butt, as you see when you're jumping. But to me, if you do it here, and you do it enough, and you get consistent at it, it will kind of just feel natural to you how to get that far jump with Flut Flut. So you want to start your jump, and flap. And you should be able to ground pound, and you should be able to make this gap. And if you do that enough, you feel pretty comfortable with Flut Flut's jumping mechanics. You might fail it a few times. Even sometimes, when I'm doing the ground pound, I kind of scale against the edge here. Sometimes you can save it, but that means that you didn't space out your jumps properly. So, something went wrong with the jump if that happens. And you kind of want to get more comfortable with jumping with Flut Flut like that. So yeah, anyways, let's head back over here. And basically that's the skill that you're trying to develop. So you can also just practice it here if you don't want to do all that. But basically you do a big jump of Flut Flut, and you kind of wait for like 4 flaps. I usually like to say 4.5 flaps. So large first jump and then like 4.5 flaps. And then ground pound. So you can kind of practice that here just to get the feel for it. Like this. But yeah, that's kind of what you're going to be doing you're just going to be doing it off of here at an angle towards the right, like this. But yeah. So now that we're past that step, we're going to go over what you do with the sticks, which is very important. And something that you really want to just focus on a little bit. So what you're doing with the sticks is when you do your ground pound, after you do your jumps and your 4.5 flaps, you're gonna do a ground pound, but not just a regular ground pound. You want to ground pound, but you want to hold down left with the L stick, kind of like southwest, and you want to hold right with the R stick, the camera stick. So you see, it's kind of gonna look like this when you're doing it. You're gonna start turning. The camera's gonna start going like this. And Flut Flut's gonna ground pound, but it's gonna go sharp left, kind of like a sharp left direction ground pound. And this is really important because you're starting off to the right, and you're gonna do a sharp left, and that's what's gonna bring you towards the cave, because the cave is kind of like in that direction. So you're gonna be going off to the right, but you're gonna do a left ground pound, and the camera's gonna start turning like this. And since the cave is off to the left, you're gonna start to see the cave once you turn the camera. So this is kind of like what you're gonna be looking at while you're doing it. You're gonna be ground pounding, and then you're gonna be going down to the left towards the cave. And when you start turning the camera, and right when you start to see the cave, because you gotta be careful here. You don't want to overdo the camera, because overdoing the camera can get you killed. And you'll die late usually when this happens. So yeah, you want to start turning the camera just like this. But when you start to see the cave, that's when all of your stick movements are going to start to change. So from there, you're going to turn your right stick to the left. So you're going to start going like this. But you don't want to go that far. It's really gentle left. Like, you want to go to the left, but you don't want to overdo it. Because I noticed that if you overdo it, sometimes it can get you killed. So I feel like it's more like a gentle to the left type movement. And you want to turn your left stick, you want to start going forward. So if you're thinking of it right, you start with your ground pound, you turn the camera like this, and then you're in the ground pound motion with Flutfoot, and you start to see the cave. And then you start to turn the camera, the right stick the opposite way, and you start to turn the left stick forward. So basically what you're doing is you're pushing yourself into the cave, but you're still sideways, and you're pushing yourself into the cave. And then where you want to go in the cave is very specific too, but I also want to make some other pointers about that as well. So yeah, we're gonna look at, those are all the things that you kind of need to keep in mind before you start trying to figure out where you're gonna go into the cave. But that can get a little bit more complicated, but we're gonna go over that as well. So basically, I'll try and show you how that works. If I don't fail it, but if I do, I'll show it again. But basically, you come off like this, go to the right, do 4.5 flaps, start to turn the camera, and then you go in there like that. But that was a little bit risky, and I'll explain why. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of back out with the camera. We're just going to go straight up like this. And you can see, this is what you're going to be looking at when you start to come back towards the cave. So you're doing gondola, you come out with your jump like right here. You come out from this corner, you come out to the right, and then you start going straight down to the left, and you're turning your camera like this to the right. And you're going to start coming towards the cave, and that's when you start to turn your camera, you turn your right stick to the left, and you start pushing forward with the left stick. And you're pushing forward because you want to try to try to get yourself in the right sweet spot so that you can end up down in the cave like this. This is literally what you're doing. That's literally gondola skip right there. But there's a few things you need to keep in mind. There's a few places where you can safely get in there and you might be fine. You can go in here, and I'll show you what it looks like. You go straight like this, you push forward on the stick, and then you should end up, this is where you're mostly going to end up if you're pushing forward properly. You're going to end up right in the cave like this. You can go here, you can push forward, and you end up right in the cave like this. And then you can go back here, which some other people might, I see some other people do sometimes. You can go through here, and you just end up right in the cave. But you gotta be careful, because in each of these positions, what you do with your left stick changes. And there's a few things you gotta be cautious of. Let me see if I can actually have Jack walk over here, and it'll be able to show you a bit better. You see how these rocks are kind of hard? Like, they're actual rocks that Jack is getting stuck on. And some of these rocks aren't actual rocks. Like, you just fall right through them. So you can fall right through this, you can fall right through that, you fall right through that, you don't fall right through this. And there's some things in between here that you can't fall right through. So like these rocks go a lot deeper than you think they might. So you gotta be cautious of that too. And you can see that Jack is kind of getting stuck on these rocks. Like this. So these are things you gotta be cautious of when you're going to these different positions. Because these rocks, if you're not careful with them, will push you in directions that you don't intend to go. And if you're not prepared for that, you will have to adjust. You will fail the trick, basically. And so if you do hit them, you can usually adjust yourself with the L stick, and you'll still end up in the cave. But if you're not careful, what may happen is, let me free cam. If you're not careful, like for instance, you can hit this rock, and you will get pushed so far that you will completely miss the cave by going too far forward. So too far forward is a possibility if you're not careful. And then another incident that can occur is if you go over here, sometimes you might hit this rock here and it will push you forward and you will go all the way over here and you'll glitch under the cave, or you might pop out and end up over here. And you don't want that because you want to end up in the cave, obviously, because there's high chances for hard lock with Flufflet out here if you're not careful with the zones. So these are all things you have to be careful of when you're doing gondola skip. So you can aim for these different areas, but you have to be cautious with what you got to do with the L stick in order to make sure that you don't get hit by any of these rocks that are hard and physical that you can see Jack can interact with. Flufflet will interact with them too in bad ways. So you got to be careful with these rocks, and you can get pushed in different directions. So the safest way that I've found, and that I'm going to try to focus on, is to just go right through here. But you have to be careful when you go through here, because you can hit some of these rocks. You see these rocks over here. You can hit this. If you hit this, you might get pushed forward like this, which could kill you. And if you hit this one, you go too far forward like this, you can get pushed. And you won't, when you're trying to go forward, you think you're trying to go forward, but you're actually not. And that's what you have to think of, that's what you have to try and understand when you're messing up. You think you're, like, you can see Jack's getting hit here, right? Jack can't keep going because these rocks go deeper than you think they do. So if you, when you free cam, they're kind of like still here. So you can go into this right spot, but if you start trying to go forward so quickly, you hit these rocks, you won't keep going forward, and you will end up getting stuck in this area here, which is not the cave, and you will die. So those are all the different ways you can fail the trick. Either you mess up the camera movements and you die like late, like right when you're about to hit the cave, or you mess up your initial jump and you die early on in the trick, or you will get to the cave and you will hit something, or you don't aim properly with the L stick and you will end up either getting out here, which is not what you want, or getting stuck in between here, or getting pushed all the way outside the cave there. So those are the different options. Those are the different scenarios that I've experienced, and I've tried to take in information from watching other runners. Like, there's great tutorials that are also linked in the description. But yes, those are the things that I've noticed. I'm trying to make like a more detailed explanation. But yeah, so those are the things you want to keep focus on when you're doing this trick. So to me, the safest thing to do is to go right in here, right in this little area right here. And then when you go, like, you got to be careful not to hit this rock and not to hit this rock. So you want to make sure you go through it and then forward. And then if you push forward with the stick, you will end up in the cave. And then you just walk up and you continue the rest of the route. So yeah, that is gondola skip. Those are all the things that I think are important to executing this trick. And hopefully all these details will help you figure out what you may be doing wrong with gondola skip. Because I've messed up this trick so many times. I still mess it up sometimes. But because I've messed it up so many times in so many different ways, I feel like it helped me figure out what's going wrong and what I can work on to fix it. So hopefully this is helpful. And of course, I will link to much shorter and more straight to the point tutorials if you want to use that, or if you want to use any of those. And hopefully this was helpful for you. But also what I want to do is try to do gondola skip a few times. So what I could do is I'll make this like an extra part on the video that if you're done with the tutorial, if I do gondola skip a few times, might just pass out on runs today, but if I do gondola skip a few times and if I can explain what went wrong each time, or explain what went right, that might be helpful for people too, so they can see the different things that go wrong. Because I'm very good at making things go wrong sometimes, but it's helpful because then I can analyze it and figure out what went wrong. But yeah, that was a lot of talking to myself, but that is going to be the main video. For now, I'm just going to record some attempts, and I'm gonna see if I can get some good examples going here. Okay, so bad, weird camera movement. It was okay. So that was okay. I was very awkward with the camera movement though. That seems to be my biggest weakness because I often have that death where I die while I'm going to the cave. Which means that your camera was bad. Your camera was bad in some way. Usually it's the right stick. I mean, no, that is the right stick. What am I talking about? It's usually you turning the right stick too much in some direction. Because you don't really need to turn the stick as much as you think you do. When you're doing the ground pound, you do, but when you're adjusting for going into the cave, you kind of don't need to turn it too much, but you also need to turn it. So the two things I noticed is sometimes my thumb hesitates to turn the right stick to the left, because you start turning it hard to the right, and then you go to the left once you start seeing the cave. So my thumb will sometimes hesitate to turn it to the left at all, and I would die. Or I turned it too much to the left. And be careful with that, because if you end up turning it too much to the left, what you're doing with the, like, I wish I could explain this in a good way. What you're doing with the L stick will change depending on how you're turning the camera, if that makes sense. So if you turn the camera too much, you're going to start going... Let me see if there's a good way for me to explain this. This probably won't be in the video, because I don't know if this is helpful or not. But I think it's important to realize. So, like, no, I don't want to be here near these workers. These are annoying. Let's try to do it right here. So, let's say you're standing, you're going like this, right? You're facing this way. If you move kind of right, forward, right, up, right, you keep going straight like this, even though the camera's like turned this way. So if you start turning the camera to the left and you keep this stick going in the same way, you're not going to go in the same direction anymore, right? Because that's how analog sticks work, obvious, right? So like if you're not being careful with how much you're turning the camera, you think that you're still going forward with Flufflet, but you actually start going in a different direction. But yeah, that's why you have to be careful, because you're going forward like this, and you turn it too much, you start going like this. And if you go like that, you end up failing the gondola skip, because you're gonna end up leaving the cave and killing yourself and getting stuck like under the